Welcome back, everyone. We're on episode 6 of She's Always On. It's been another great week in the W. We have a lot of good topics to talk about today. We're less than 3 weeks away from the All-Star and Olympic break. And who do you
Time
think,
flies.
yeah, time is flying. Who do you think needs the most momentum going into the break? I guess I can start. And personally, I feel like the Aces do. They're the 8th in the league in defensive rating, drastically needs to improve over the next couple weeks to be a contender this year. You know, the Liberty, the Lynx, the Connecticut, they're all coming. Aces
Yeah.
have a target on their back. They were back-to-back champs, and they've vocally been saying how they want to be three-peats. Well, you can't be three-peats if you don't play defense.
That's
And,
facts. You
you
sound
know,
like a
the top
coach.
no, it's true. The top 3 teams in the league are all coming for their necks, and they all can score.
Yeah.
And I personally feel like the leaders of that team have been a little bit comfortable. They believe that they can win another championship. They have those same core. Can't just rely on their best player to pull them out of games. The league
Yeah.
is too good. And I'm curious to know, like, will their lack of depth be a problem? Because 5 out of their 6 losses were all games with 1 day rest.
That's a good point of just not having the rest because they don't go that deep into their bench. So you're relying on their star players to step up every time. But I think also by the same token, like obviously the WNBA season is a shorter season, and I always
Mhm.
think about, not to compare this to the NBA, but I also think about I don't know how they do it, like playing 82
No.
games, and I'm just like, it's crazy. So I
Yeah.
do think because NBA players are able to sit out a lot of games, how does that play into the W? Like, can people
Yeah.
sit? What if they could sit out? But
Yeah.
then
I mean,
they
I
don't
think
want
that
that
all
many games to just lose, because
yeah.
if you have Asia Wilson sitting out, that's a whole different game.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that also translates over to us having only 12 people on the roster.
Right.
You know, these guys have 18 people on their roster, so that plays a huge part into, I think, why the Aces sometimes can look tired in games and
Yeah.
give up possessions on defense. Jackie Young, Kelsey Plum, Asia Wilson have a heavy load on them. Every game that they're winning, they're scoring 85% of their points.
Right.
So we'll see how this translates. Maybe the Olympic and All-Star break can give them that revamp that they needed, that
Rejuvenation.
rest that they yeah. Well, actually, no, because all 3 of them are going to the
Oh, right.
Olympics.
That's wait, yeah, skirt, take that back. That is
Yeah,
that is
all
crazy.
all 3 of them will be in the All-Star game, will be in the Olympics, so they
Yeah,
won't have
yeah,
that
that's a lot.
rest. They won't
That
have that
is
rest that everyone else needs. So I think it's imperative though that they hone down on these last couple games to give them that momentum, to give them that team chemistry going into the second half of season.
yeah. Another
But
two another team I was thinking of too is Connecticut. I think they need some momentum right now.
yeah.
Obviously, started off hot all year long, or first half of the season,
Mhm.
and now overtime game with Mystics, who is at the bottom of the barrel right now, back-to-back
Yeah.
losses against Seattle and the Aces. So, I mean, this is why I also love basketball in the WNBA, because anyone can really win anytime. Like, no
Yep.
matter how good or how bad, the underdogs, the
Yeah.
favorite. I think that's what makes it so fun. But I do think Connecticut needs to find their groove a little bit back right now.
Yeah, I
So
100% agree. But, it's not just the teams that are struggling this past couple games that need momentum, it's also the teams that are playing well.
yeah,
Seattle's hot, and you wanna keep that momentum and carry that into the break as well.
yeah.
So,
Do you think Seattle can be real contenders this season? Speaking of them.
I definitely think that Seattle can be contenders to win a championship this year because they have the pieces. They have Ezzy, Skylar, Nneka, Jewel. Damn
That's
good s
awesome.
that's a damn good 4, and they complement each other well. They're smart, they know the game,
Yeah,
and but the only question I have is the supporting cast good enough to get them there?
yeah,
Jordan Horston is playing 22 minutes a game. She's playing well. She only averages 7 points per game, but she's gritty. She creates extra possessions for them. But on the other end, her shooting from the 3 is only 24%, and teams can expose this. When you get into a
Yeah.
series, coaches like to play chess match with these type of players, and will they win it all? My money isn't on it, but I do think that they're contenders. With a new team, it takes a while to build that chemistry. I mean, we saw it last year with the New York Liberty. They had a super team, everyone said, and expected them
Yeah.
to win, but they didn't. And it just takes time. Now the New York Liberty are looking like a great team, probably one of the top contenders to win I mean, not a national championship, a WNBA championship. So I think that maybe this year isn't the year, but Seattle, it might just take a little bit of time for them.
I also love seeing Jewel Lloyd a part of that squad because I just think she's such a smart player. She just really gets that team going. Like her passing ability, the way she facilitates, gets players open, and I think that will be the next step. Like you mentioned, is finding that
Yeah.
chemistry, and that takes a little bit of time, kind of understanding each other's style of play and all of those things. So those are all great points. I do think they are definitely a team to watch out for.
Yeah. Speaking of teams to watch out, who has built strong identities through this first half of the season?
Well, I feel like we'd be crazy not to say Connecticut, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they proved themselves when they were on a what was it, a 11 game win streak? Maybe
Yeah.
fact check me, but um they look like a completely different team from last year to this year. And to me, the biggest difference has been their defense. And mostly, I remember even talking to Coach Steph about this, is just they didn't want to be put in rotations a lot. But that also comes to self accountability, right? Like keeping your
Mhm.
person in front of you. So I think all five players being able to do that, keep their players in front, not forcing the team to be in rotations, like they just look better defensively. They're playing together. And we can't forget about Alyssa Thomas. She is the identity of that team. Like
Yeah.
a triple double machine, second in defensive rating. So yeah, they're a great team. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes when people forget that just because they lost or whatever, like losses are going to come. Like there things are going to happen. Like
Yeah.
those ups and downs are all a part of it.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's how you learn and grow and eventually build to a championship team is those losses.
Yeah.
But for me, I think the Lynx have built a strong identity. We can't
Yeah.
go through this week without talking about them, Commissioner Cup champs.
Yeah.
Uh, I think their identity is unselfish team ball. They have
Yes.
such balanced scoring throughout their entire roster, and every single person on that starting 5 is a threat to score, and that's extremely hard to guard.
I
You never
agree.
know, like, Bridget Carlton was averaging 8 points, had a 23-point night. You just never know who's gonna go off at any moment, and because
That's the
the
best part too.
yeah, it's so much fun to play in that type of system when everyone is just sharing the ball, they don't care who scores. You can tell that they have one goal in mind, and that's a WNBA championship.
Right.
So
And yeah, I also agree with that. But to go into the next topic of deadline coming up. Any teams that we think should be making some trades?
Um, I think we can't, disregard Indiana.
Yeah. They need some
They're
trades.
they have a little bit of like something's missing for them. You know,
Yeah.
Caitlin is the head of the snake on their team, and
Right.
I think her chemistry, obviously with Aaliyah Boston, has gotten 10 times better since the beginning of the season. But I think
They
she
look a lot
needs,
better, yeah.
yep, I think she needs another big guard to complement her
Mhm.
in the backcourt, maybe somebody who can catch those passes and finish and, hit an open three when she's getting doubled.
Yeah.
Um,
I think too,
yeah,
Aaliyah Boston has the ability to knock down that mid-range shot. So if you have another person down there, down low, is attracting that defense, I'll also open up her and also Caitlin Clark. Like they got to start building around Caitlin now.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, with trade deadlines, you can't just trade for anyone.
Yes.
There's a salary cap issue that is underlined that people don't understand. Maybe you can explain it for them?
Yes, I'll explain. So, salary cap is basically you can't just trade one player for another player. Basically, the maximum allowed total salary of all the players a team has on the books. The WNBA is different from most other professional sports leagues. The US and that salary cap is hard to cap with very little wiggle room. So basically, you can't trade Jordan Horston. I'm saying her name wrong. For
Horston.
Kelsey Plum. Yeah. Sorry, girl. Mispronouncing. For Kelsey Plum or for Christy Wallace for Clea Copper. So it has to be the same amount of money
Yeah,
that person's making for another person, if that
for
makes
sure.
sense.
And I feel like I think that this is why we don't see so many big trades in the WNBA like we see in the NBA. Like it
Yeah.
has to be money for money. It can't just be
Right.
like random
It can't
person
be
for
let's get a Kelsey Plum like
exactly.
200K and we got
Exactly.
70K given up. Like
Yeah,
you
exactly.
can't do that.
And
For the NBA, it's also different because they're all making over millions of dollars. So it's
yeah,
like I
yeah.
think the money is just different.
That money has a little bit more flexibility than we have.
Yeah. We talking cash over there.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I think that with that being said, I think a good trade for Indiana, they could look at maybe Christy Wallace for Leon Fibich on the New York
Yeah,
Liberty. Wallace earns 71,000 and Fibich earns 67,000, so that would be a pretty even trade. But I think Fibich would be a great fit for them because she's another big guard that can defend, and she has
yeah,
just a lot better shooting ability than Christy Wallace and finishing ability. So those passes that we see Caitlin Clark throwing to them in transition, or they're not allowed to help off of Christy Wallace because they have a shooter in the corner.
yeah,
So it opens up the floor for Aaliyah Boston. It opens up a floor for Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah to play that two-man game.
yeah.
So I think that's something that they can look into, but trade deadline should be really interesting.
It
Um,
is.
yeah, we'll
I also
see.
want to add too that for Washington Mystics, I think they've got to look into some trading. I think truthfully, in my opinion, I think they did a huge mistake by trading Natasha Cloud. Like I think she was a dog on that team and
Yeah,
she gave her heart and soul on that team. So I think they truthfully have to find like another Natasha Cloud.
yeah,
Because
like a
she
leader.
yeah, like a leader of that team. It kind of like look at the Phoenix Mercury. Like they were trash last year. Like literally, like they were not good. And now that team has completely revamped with all the trades they made with Skylar Diggins and sorry, not Skylar Diggins. Oh my god. They have Diana Taurasi and
Yeah,
building all around that. So I just think they need to do something like that.
yeah. We know that there's tons of talent that are also not in the league, so maybe they can go get
Yeah,
somebody that, just
international.
international, didn't make a roster. Like with the Olympic break, there's so much time to talk about,
Yeah.
okay, what is it that we need? Who can fit our system? And they have time
They
to integrate them as well.
Yeah, and Connecticut brought Veronica Burton back on the team
Mhm.
after she got waived. So
Yeah.
I think there's so much talent. So,
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll see how that shapes up over the next couple weeks.
yeah.
Everyone be on the lookout for how the rest of the teams finish out these next 3 weeks going into the All-Star break. Keep voting for your favorite players.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's all for today. In our second half of this segment, we have a special guest. Can't wait for you guys to hear all about her.
Everyone, welcome back to She's Always On. We have a very special guest here, Maddy Seigrist, Villanova all-time great here, and now with the Dallas Wings really making her mark. And obviously, Maddy, you've broken records, Big East all-time leading scorer, men's or women's. First question I want to start off with you is what was a turning point for you in your career, whether
Um,
that's college or WNBA?
hmm. I think like college, I got hurt my first year, so I redshirted that year, and freshman year of college, you don't really know what to expect. I feel like every jump you make is a big jump, and any sport, but definitely for basketball, just bigger, stronger, faster. So having that redshirt year and being able to like learn, watch, get a little stronger. At the time, I did not think when I got hurt, I was like, this is terrible. But I look back now and I'm like, wow, I learned a lot that year and like got a lot physically and mentally stronger. And then I think year 1 to 2 in the WNBA is always so much better. you just know what to expect. You have a real off season, like for the first time in a long time, to really train your body, um, to do what you want it to do.
That's
It's
great.
funny you say, you talk about that redshirt year. I took a redshirt year as well because I transferred. And it's crazy because like kids don't want to take that time anymore to
Yeah.
just get better. It's all they want instant success. And it's just
Mhm.
been cool to watch how you've used your redshirt year to benefit you. And I feel like it could benefit a lot of kids now too.
Definitely, and I think, like, I know we're almost to the end of the COVID years, but, like,
Mhm.
there's so many, like, freshmen that are coming in, and there's 5th, 6th-year players, like,
Right.
your coach is gonna go with the 5th or 6th year, I mean, from, what I would think. So it's like that it is beneficial. Obviously, like, you don't wanna do it at 18, and it's like, "Oh, like, college, 1 more year." Meanwhile, I feel like everybody who leaves college is like, "Oh, I wish I had 1 more year."
That is true.
Yeah, exactly. When did you realize in college you had a chance at playing in the WNBA?
Probably like towards the end of my sophomore year, more junior year. I I feel like growing up, it was just like, oh, I want to play in college and then professionally, and like wasn't really sure what that was going to look like. And then I remember like scouts starting to come a little bit when I was a sophomore, and then I'm like, oh, that's so far away. And then my junior year, I'm like, oh, like okay, like maybe this is like a real thing. Um, and then my senior year, like okay, like I'm gonna do this, but I had the COVID year, so I had to make that decision, and then I was like ultimately like okay, I'm ready for that next phase.
Yeah, that COVID year, just for viewers out there who are kind of trying to make a decision, whether that's to take an extra year or not, what was that process like for you, and kind of what weighed in and trying to take it, not to take it or take it?
Well, I think the red shirt for me, the red shirt year had a lot to do with it because I was in school for 5 years, so I got my master's and like finished my degree.
You're
Um,
like, I'm done with school.
school wasn't the hard, like you got it figured out by then. But just I want my senior year was like everything that could have happened great like, was happening, and like if I could repeat that year forever, I would. But unfortunately, like it doesn't work like that, and like you're never gonna have the same team again. You can't replicate. And I was like, I knew like it was time for me to grow into a new challenge. But it was hard because I loved Villanova. I loved my coaches. I was so comfortable there, but sometimes you gotta go and like try something new, and it's hard. But I'm glad I made that decision.
That's awesome.
You mentioned that you finally going from year one to year two that you had a real off season. This off season, you were a special assistant to the seniors women's administrator. What was that like, and what did that require from you?
So it came like to be kind of quickly like last summer. Like my coach Denise Dillon at Villanova called and was like, what are your plans for the off season?" And I knew that like I needed a break. Like just from, the summer before I played USA basketball, then it was right into senior year, right into the WNBA. So I'm like, I don't know if overseas is the best option for me right now. She was like, okay, well, we want you at Villanova, but we don't know what it's gonna look like. So of course I'm like, yeah, sure, like no idea.
Why not?
Um, yeah, and it was great. It was like I went to practice every day. I played a few days a week, but like was able to like be with the like some of my teammates, which is kind of weird.
Yeah,
But
I was
as
gonna
the
say,
year,
was that dynamic tough?
yeah, like I think my class there was like 4 or 5 that left, so it wasn't as bad as it could have been, but that was cool. And then I did a lot like of like events, like speaking engagements, like fundraising with the school, meeting with donors. So that was cool because I feel like as a player, you're worried about the games and practices. You don't even, occasionally you got to go to events, but you're like, okay, I'm here for an hour, like, and
Right.
then this was like, okay, this is your job. Like you got to talk to these people, which was definitely cool, something different for sure.
Could you see yourself working on that side of things when it's all said and done?
I think a little bit. Like I think I want to get into coaching, but
Okay.
when we were like talking about what this job was going to look like, I think it would have been too hard right away for me, just because like it would have been like tough with all my teammates, and like you were just playing and now you're gonna coach them. So I was like, let me try a different role, which was just cool just to see like how much like work goes in planning the trips. Like they're planning a big foreign tour this summer. And I was like, "You're working on this now?" And it was like November. They're like, "When
Yeah.
do you think this gets done?" I
Yeah.
was like, "I don't know."
Speaking of coaching your teammates, I'm actually, what I was telling you before, I'm assistant coaching the national team, but I played with a lot of these girls. And I'm like, it is tough. It is a different, because it's just like they see you one way, but they do respect me a lot. And I'm like, okay, so you find that balance. But I completely get what you're saying, because I'm like, oh, I want to go and hang out. But it's like, you really should.
I know. I felt like after practice, I was like, you're so used to like, oh, what are you guys doing later? And I'm like,
Like a lunch.
yeah, I'm like, okay, let me ask the staff. Like, hey, what do you?
Yeah.
This
Oh, you got it, Keith.
you
Nah, it's
also
all
you also played in AU this past off season. How was that? I know a lot of girls sometimes think like, maybe should I go overseas or play in the AU? Can you tell our viewers like how your experience was playing in that?
Yeah, so it was a great experience for me. Like, fortunately, a few of my teammates last year on Dallas played in it before, so I asked them a lot of questions, and it was in Dallas, which was great because I was able to train with my Dallas like people, and in the off season, usually your WNBA team wants you somewhat in market for at least some time.
Yeah.
So that was great being able to train there, and then 15 games in 5 weeks is like almost an overseas season. So to be able to play, I think it was like 25 W players or at least 30 with W experience. So it was great just to have that. And it's like, it's fun, it's exciting, but it's competitive and you're getting these reps in. So for me to have that um, to do also was great because like then it gives you had about a month after that before you had to go to camp. So you had time to still like your body wasn't like overly tired or anything, but you were in game shape.
Do you think that played a part in your leap that you took this year?
I think so. It just allowed me so much more freedom to like play different positions, guard different positions. Like in AU, like there were some days I was the 5, and then I'm bringing the ball up. So like it was cool because like you don't usually have that freedom as a rookie. W. So to be able to like get those reps in was great, and knowing you're going against like good talent, like this is what you're gonna see. That helped me a lot too, and I think it helps your mind because you're like I've done this. Like I already played against these guys in AU like for X amount of time. So now it's like when you see them, you're like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah.
gives you a boost of confidence. And what area of your game do you feel like you felt more confident in and just grew?
Just like overall, like I feel like when you a rookie, it's just so fast. Like your head's spinning. Like you don't even realize like what's going on. And then so the game slows down throughout the year. Like last year towards the end it was slowing down, but like still being like, whatever you bring to the table, like still trying to be like that aggressor, but like know
Yeah.
when to be aggressive. Like that was tough for me because I'm like, am I supposed to shoot it? Am I not? Am I supposed to pass it? So just like slowing the game down and really working out of like the sets. Like we ran a
Yeah.
5-out motion at Villanova, and on the wings we have 2 centers, like true centers. So I've never played with centers before.
Wow.
So just learning how to like, am I like, I don't want to cut into somebody, so like when to cut, when not to cut. Like
Yeah.
I'm used to posting, but sometimes you have other people posting. I usually play the 3, so it's like I'm trying to post my mismatch, and they got a mismatch too. So
Yeah.
kind of just like learning that kind. I feel like just slowing the game down, and then of course you work on like shooting quicker, efficient. Like you don't need a million dribbles. You have 2 dribbles, so make a move.
That's such a
Yeah.
good point. Because these days I feel like everybody's like talking about like just, I don't know, I watch workouts, especially on Instagram and YouTube, and you just see people working on like 10,000 different moves. It's like, when do you really have the time to use all of those? Or, yeah, that's a good point though.
Yeah, and I feel like I look back at like my time at Villanova, and like as many times like you had the ball in your hands, like I could probably like maybe 3 times a game I dribbled more than twice. Not
Right.
because like unless you're bringing the ball up or a fast break, but
Right.
like it was never that. It was either okay, catch and shoot, pass, dribble, like, but it all was like quick. So I think like when the
Right.
game speeds up, you like your instinct is to not dribble and just pass it out, and it's like okay, relax, like how to go like slow and fast at the same time was
Yeah.
something I really worked on this off season.
Yeah, that's great. Especially when you're like we talked about this before, me and Adona, like playing with people who like Arike or
Yeah,
Satu, where, they're just more ball dominant and you have to find your place in the team. As a rookie,
definitely.
that's really, really hard.
Yeah. Well, you're
Yeah.
used to like, college, everything's running through you. You're the best player. You're like, oh, like, all right.
All
Even,
right, I'll
even,
just do this.
yeah, even when you're like 1 from 7, they're trying to get you going. Like, you're going to get going.
Yeah.
Here,
Um,
if you don't get going, you're sitting.
Definitely. And then just, you're trying to find your role. And like for me, like this year, I was like, I'm going to focus on running the floor like every single possession because if you just play a little bit harder than everyone else, you might
Yeah.
be able to get yourself an extra, layup or something. And then like offensive rebounds. So if you defend and do those two things, like the ball always finds you offensively, you're going to get plays, whatever. But like just focusing on doing those two things, and I feel like that helped me like simplify it because I'm like, okay, the ball, like, you run the floor hard every time, eventually, somebody's going to forget to run the floor and you're going to get a layup.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, this year you guys had a ton of injuries so far, and we've seen you step into more of a leadership role in just your second year. What's been the most challenging part of being a young leader on a team filled with stars like Arike and, all these people?
I feel like, my time at Villanova definitely prepared me like to be, I was started to, had to become a leader young there as well. And like last year I was very passive, like, cause you're a rookie, you don't know what to say. You're like, okay, I'm just going to watch. And that was a conversation I had with my coach. And she was like, you can't be passive. Like we need you to, you're saying the right things. You got to say them. So that was something I was conscious about. And then like we had a couple injuries and it was like, maybe the second or third game, and I turned around and it was like a close game, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's me, like I gotta say something. And even if it's like, picking Enrique up or, saying something quick to the team, bringing in the huddle, I'm like, I'm not gonna give in, I'm not in the position to directionally be like, hey, you should do this. But I'm
Right.
like, I can like say, okay, guys, like we got this, we're in a good spot. Like, cause panic is always sets in when it's close games. Like, and that was like always helped me at Villanova, like being like, all right, guys, we're good. So like trying to bring that as well. And, that also helps you feel more comfortable and confident in those situations too. So then when the ball's passed to you, if, a minute left in the game, you take the shot, you don't bobble it or think to pass.
Yeah, good
And
point.
what do you feel like is the most important quality as a leader?
I think like you gotta like like it's always a we. It's not like, hey, you guys, like you're not above anyone else. You're in the same boat. And I think like when you're like genuine like that, I feel like, for me, that's when I take the best advice from someone is when they're like vulnerable too. And they're like, hey, like I gotta be better at this, but as a group, we gotta rebound. And you're like, oh, okay. Like you're not saying like, I'm the only one rebounding. Like I feel like,
Yeah.
we've all had leaders like that. And you're like,
Yeah.
really?
You're like, wait.
Yeah.
That's true.
A little bit off court stuff. You've seemed to be an extremely faithful person. How has that helped you throughout your career?
Definitely just like helps you keep everything in perspective. I grew up like a Catholic family, church every Sunday, but I feel like at Villanova I really discovered, my faith on my own. Like, in college you decide, like no one's telling you to go to mass. You either go or you don't.
Yeah.
And me getting hurt that first year, my coach at the time would go to daily mass, and like I remember he was like, "Do you want to come?" And I'm like, "All right." And I like went the first time, and then I'm like, maybe I'm gonna go back. And like I kind of got in the habit of going every day, and like then later in the later years of my career at Villanova, like the more pressure it got, I just was like, all I can control is like doing the best I can and giving it to God, because like whenever like the records, the streaks, like people always want to talk about that, and I'm like, my job is to play basketball the best I can. And like I feel like when I was younger in my career at Villanova, it was hard to understand like your best might be 13 points one day and then it could be 40 the next day, and then it could be 6 and then it could be 8. Like so just knowing that helped me because like take the pressure off. And then the same, in the W as well, like just, leaning on that and through injuries. I mean, I'm in the perfect situation now, but just realizing like, this is a small step in your journey. And fortunately, like, I'm young in my career and like, things happen for a reason. So even though when you have to pause for a little bit, like try to flip it, which is hard. I mean, not every day you're like, oh, this is what I wanted, but it just helped me like try to put everything in perspective.
Yeah,
And
that's awesome.
speaking of that injury, you said you keep things into perspective, but I feel like people don't realize how much of a mental toll it takes. Kind of like, how are you keeping yourself up? Because I tore my ACL 3 times, so I know exactly how, something holding you back from something you love feels. But yeah,
Yeah.
give us the tea.
So of course, first play of the game, we're playing Minnesota. First play, go to deflect the ball, and I think it's fine. Turns out after the game, it's broken, needs surgery. I'm like, this is tough. I'm like, can you tape it? The guy's like, no, you can't tape it to the other finger. I was like, because that's obviously what you think. You're like, finger, don't even need it. You do need it. So just, for me, like luckily the Olympics are this year, so that break really helps. When it is perfect. It's, when I get, my pins out and I'll be able to start doing more and like then I'll be good for the games. So
Hold up, you said you have pins in your finger?
yes, you can't see them, but they're in there somewhere. But they come out. I won't have them.
That's crazy.
So yeah, just trying to look at it, do the best I can for my team now. Just trying to be like that outlet for the younger players. Like, hey, if you need anything, like obviously you want to be out there with them, but knowing injuries is a part of the game, and you can't live your life afraid of them. So just kind of when they happen, you just gotta take it head on. And like I give myself grace. Like there's some days I'll be like, this sucks, it's horrible, and you let yourself have that for a little, and then you're like, okay, I got to turn it around now. Like attack the rehab. Luckily, it's a hand. When I've had like leg stuff or ankle stuff, like that's a pain because it affects you walking. Like I can walk. Me and my mom going on a lot of hot girl walks. I'm like, do you want to walk? I'm like, you want to walk? Yeah. I'm like, you want to walk again? She's like, we just got back, Maddy. I'm like, I know, but what are we gonna do?
It reminds me of COVID. Like all I did was walk.
Literally, we're doing the same loops around my house. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been here before.
Do they have you doing like right hand workouts? Like,
So I think next week we progress to that. I got some stitches that gotta come out before
okay.
I sweat. So if my doctor's watching this, no right hand yet.
She's doing all her things.
Yeah.
So what's something that people don't know about you? Obviously, basketball is a huge factor in your life. Your faith is a huge factor in your life. What's something that people just don't know?
Yeah.
Sometimes I like to go off the grid, like no phone, like I'll go like for a walk or the beach, like, and I'll just leave my phone, like for like a couple hours. Like I try to do that like once a week, and
Wow.
just like try to unplug because I feel like now like social media is so important for your brand and like you get your whole life's on your phone in some ways, and I just like want to make sure that I'm not dependent like on it. So it's like obviously like there's times you have to have your phone so people call you whatever, but like just try to like unplug a little bit to really like be like with the people I'm around. Like if I'm at dinner, like I'll really try consciously to like not look at it and be like, okay, like I'm here right now.
Do you feel a little bit overwhelmed with the brand, you being a brand now? Like you are literally a walking brand. Like, and I feel like now it's kind of the expectation of you guys to like, oh, let's sign these deals. This is where I can make money. This is where I can, like, is that a little bit overwhelming for you?
It's definitely different, and I'm not like a huge like social media like I go on it like everyone else, but I'm not like I don't love it. I'm not like posting like, oh, I can't wait to post this, and that's not what I'm thinking. But at the same time, it's like, I probably should lean in a little bit more. And I think, that's like an off-season thing. That's the way I think of it. I'm like, in the off-season, I'll lean in more.
Yeah.
But you got to just take it in strides. Like, everyone's always like, oh, just post it and like that kind of thing. So I've been trying to get better with that. But I think, like, this brand of like college athletes are like way better at it than I ever was. So they're, really leaning in, like doing the get ready with me is like, staying the life. Like if I didn't get ready with me, the phone would fall 6 times. Like I would be like, oh, I forgot something.
That's funny.
It would be chaotic.
To actually I don't think we've ever talked about this on our show too, but the reason why we named this show She's Always On is because we feel like as athletes, as whatever you do, you feel like you always have to be on, and you're a brand and you always do have to be on. Have you felt that of just like kind of, whether that's from Villanova playing the WNBA, have you felt that?
Yeah, definitely. I think, it's also like where you are. Like if I'm wearing a basketball Villanova, Dallas Wings, and I'm, at my hometown, Villanova or Dallas, like then I feel like I'm like, okay. Sometimes like you go like you're like, oh, I'm not dressed like I look like a normal person. You're also 6'2", so people are like, that's cool. But I do feel like that. Like you gotta be like conscious of like what you're doing and like who you're with and like all everything. Which is like good and bad. It definitely keeps you like, okay, like I'm not gonna do that. I feel like especially like high school, like and college athletes, like you have to answer more to your coach. Like you do at the professional level as well, but like it's a different factor. I feel like people in college are always getting trouble for something.
Not in your rooms, not
room checks or wearing the wrong shoes, wearing the wrong color shirt.
Oh my god! Well, that's what for the national team. I like this brought deja vu back because I'm like, man, we team lunch, team dinner, all this. Like I'm forgetting about everything.
Yeah, and I feel like sometimes I'm like, doesn't matter what color shoes, and then I'm like, oh nope, they want a uniform, like everybody like team, like I get it, but in college I would be like, really, it doesn't matter what color shirt. I always did it. I never broke rules, but I was like, come on.
Yeah,
Right.
no, I do have to ask this. This goes for both of you guys because obviously you guys played in the W. I didn't reach there, but the outfits walking into pre-games, does that give you anxiety? Because I feel like that would give me anxiety the day before for no reason. Like, what am I gonna wear? How's my outfit gonna look? And is this picture gonna make me look crazy because I'm not gonna see it beforehand? So I just want your thoughts on that because I feel like other people are thinking the same thing.
It's definitely a lot. I mean, I think you got to lean into it. If you don't, I mean, some people like don't care and they wear their WNBA jumpsuit or they wear like whatever. I would suggest like lean into it. Some people want to have stylists for every single outfit. Which if that's what you like, do it. For me, I try to balance it. Like, I don't know if heels for me every game is a thing. Like, it's uncomfortable, but like I balance like comfy days. I'll wear like Puma head to toe, and I'll be like, oh, okay, this is like a nice little comfy outfit. And then like I'll be like, oh, I should dress up and like go back and forth. But there's an area in my closet of like things I haven't worn yet that I'm like, okay, I could pick from this section.
Right. That's funny.
I think it is stressful for a lot of people though.
Yeah. I definitely was stressed out. I'm like, sometimes I don't want my picture taken. Sometimes I just want to show up and just play basketball. Especially as a rookie, you're like, I don't have that much money.
With the chains, I'm like, where did you guys get that? They give those out?
The designer shoes, like, wait.
Wait, you got Gucci shoes? Like,
I'm like, oh, I missed those. Weren't in my locker.
Funny.
Right. But I mean, I think it's fun to see people's personalities and come out in outfits, and it's been cool to see. But personally, I think I was a little stressed, and I think as the years go on, you probably get better and better at being like, okay, maybe I can plan these like a couple months in advance, or
Yeah, I have a few teammates who do that. Like they're like, oh, I have all my outfits. I'm like, already? Like it is May.
That's great.
I go like maybe a week. Like if we're on the road, I'll be like, okay, this is what I'm wearing.
Yeah,
but it's crazy because I mean, I'm sure you guys for college you're wearing the same sweatsuit and the same T-shirt every game,
right?
On the bus, so it's easier. Like, all right, I need this sweatsuit for the road trip. That's it. And
well, now some colleges are doing their own little tunnel walks. I'm like, this is
crazy. Life is different.
Definitely.
But we wanted to ask you a fun question. Villanova is looking deep for the Knicks. Yeah. Is that the team? Is that the team you support?
Yes. So growing up, Knicks. I'm not going to say diehard because that's not true. But like from New York, so obviously let's go Knicks. Now I'm very much back on the Knicks, but I feel like everyone from Villanova is now a Knicks fan. But it's crazy they got Mikal. Like that's awesome.
I know.
Joking about it. And they were
time tweet or whatever it was with all them. I was dying.
I know. I'm trying to get a shirt for it.
Facts. Who was their post player though? Like, can we get all five?
I think it was Ryan Arch. He was on the Knicks, and then they got let go. So maybe they bring him back.
Just for the plot.
I mean, does Jay Wright come back? I mean,
I think who knows? Like, it's crazy.
Maybe they'll bring him as a consultant. If I'm him, I'm going to courtside every game. Just watch all your players. Right. Just see them all.
And he could go back. You got Bronny James playing with his dad now. Like, it's crazy.
wild. It's exciting.
But
Crazy
Maddy,
time.
it's been so great to have you on. We don't want to take up any more of your time. You were killing it out there, and we hope you recover as soon as possible. But Keith, you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a huge fan since Villanova, so I'm excited to see you continue to grow, and good luck the rest of the season. We hope you get healthy and just come back. You have my MIP vote if I had one.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for having me.